Welcome! Once you have created your first board and pushed around the first couple of cards, it's the perfect time to check out Trello's automation. And again, like the previous video, this tutorial is not sponsored. I just want more people to know about this and nobody try to stop me. Plus, until we get to the last part of this video, I'm using Trello's free tier, so no matter which tier you're on, you can tag along. Automation sounds complex and hard, but it is remarkably easy to implement and you won't need any language knowledge apart from English. We will create a few different kinds of automation in order of complexity. Automated labeling of cards depending on the list they are in. Creating a button that picks something random from our to-do list and moves it into the focus list. Creating a card button which simplifies setting up card dependencies a lot. Automating writing a list of changes for patch notes or milestones. And automating cleaning up the board whenever milestones have been reached. Through these examples, you'll get a good idea on how setting up automation works, what it looks like, and might see areas those skills could come in handy on your own project board. After that, we are going to have a look at custom fields and some other useful add-ons and finishing up with what will I get on top in case I start paying for Trello. And if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments or over on my Discord server. Let's say I want all my cards in wishlist to be automatically labeled with the corresponding label. This could be useful because as my project grows and I keep working on system and elements, I might lose track on what is a core system and what is something I would love the project to have, but is basically just a cherry on top. Can't be focusing too hard on only the cherries after all. Click on the button with the lightning icon and you will be presented a list of things you could do. Pick rules for now. We'll look at the others in a moment. The longer you work with your board, the better Trello will get to know your typical workflows and it will start listing automations you might enjoy down here. Not all are useful and you won't ever need all of them, but give them a look from time to time if you feel like you're doing a lot of repeating tasks over and over and over and over again. We want to create an automation. First, we need a trigger. It's an event Trello is listening for. These are categories of triggers and below are corresponding events. Card move contains creation of new cards as well. I guess they get moved from non-existence to existence? Everything that has an outline is a choice you have to make. So to label cards that get added to the list wish list automatically, we pick this choice. The differences of added to, moved to, and created in can be a bit confusing if your English is your nth language. Thus we get a handy explanation below. Created in would be the correct one, as I would fill this list with ideas by hand, not by moving cards into it. Clicking into the list name field gives us a pick for which list we are targeting, and by me, only ever needs any second glance if you're working in a team. We add the trigger by clicking plus. Next up is a selection of actions to take. Again, categories are at the top. You can, for example, add specific checklists to cards created in the list we specified. That is a rule I like using a lot. But for this, we want to add the specific label to a card. We can add more actions, but this is enough for the task at hand. Click Save. It will be listed in the big overview of rules we wrote for our Trello boards. That's useful for when we want to work with multiple boards and enable or disable certain functionality. If I remember back to the 400 rules monstrosity I built and administered back in the day, it was also a good place to search for rules I had previously created to make changes. If you later want to change parts of your rule, add or remove elements or change string fields, you can click on the pen icon. If it's a string field, you can just change the text directly. Let's give it a test. If we drag a card from core experience to wishlist, nothing happens. But let's say I want to add guinea pigs to my project. They are sadly optional to the core experience. I add the card into the list directly, wait a couple of seconds, and the label will get set automatically. This is a thing you'll have to get used to with automations. They come into effect with a 2 to 3 second delay. I've been using them for years on multiple subscription tiers, and this was the case every time. Also, rules only come into effect after they get created. This sounds like a given, but it also means that cards already in a list will not be affected by the rule you just created. In case of adding labels, remember you can just hover over a card and add the label manually by pressing a number key. These kinds of trigger action automations are invisible for users. As the person creating the rule, you can always see a log of when and how it worked by clicking on the light bulb in the overview. For something more visible, let's have a look at board buttons next. Those are buttons which are being displayed in this top bar with an icon of your choice and do things when pressed. Let's say we have a bunch of cards in our to-do pile and fall into choice paralysis when looking at it. This button is going to be a big helper. Create a new list called Today's Focus. Again, click the lighting icon and pick Buttons this time. In the left menu, pick Board Buttons and Create Button. Set an icon you want to associate with the action, give it a short descriptive name, and choose if you want to enable it by default. If you say yes, this button will be available on all of your boards. In version 1 of this automation, we want to move 3 randomly selected cards from the to-do list into Focus Today. Thus, select Move Cards, move 3 randomly selected cards from list To Do to the bottom of list Today's Focus. Whenever you see small buttons like this one, you get offered even more details. In this case, you could say to which board the card should be moved, which is irrelevant for small projects or the free tier, as your amount of boards is limited. Click Save. If you are working in a team and want to enable the button to more people, you need to check anyone in Workspace can enable this button, or you will be the only one having access to it, which can be useful depending on the task you assigned to the button. Your new button is now available at the top. Once clicked, you'll be notified that automation is happening down here. Especially for this button, I typically create another trigger automation. If there are more than 3 cards in today's focus, move it back to the to-do pile. Today's focus is only for a limited number of targets after all. If you are working with a more complex system in which you are not just using one particular to-do list, but have it more spread out and sorted by topic or area, I recommend a slightly different approach. Instead of a list to stuff things into, let's label them and let them stay in their respective lists. Remember, you can filter by pressing F and selecting the label you are looking for. Nothing to automate here. And if you enjoyed this tutorial so far, please give it a like. Subscribe if you're interested in more game dev tutorials. I typically focus on UI topics for Unity. The third automation I want to showcase are card buttons. They work like board buttons, just that they will show up in the right side menu of a card's back. As you remember from the previous tutorial, you can create dependencies by hand, turning checklist items into their own cards and link them together by copy-pasting URLs. That works, but it's super tedious. Let's say we have a system that has a list of dependencies, which is basically just a checklist, and to keep things organized, we'll call the list dependents. Each of the entries should be turned into their own cards. However, the entries should remain in the list to allow for checking them on or off. Additionally, the cards should include attachments that link back to this system, enabling quick navigation between elements. Create a new card button. To me, dependencies corresponds best with this group icon. Give it a short name. You get to check if the card should be closed once the action got performed. This can make sense for card buttons like sending cards to other boards, assigning teammates, or shoving them into the Done by button press instead of drag and drop. For this system though, we will keep it toggled off. For our action, we go into the Cascade tab, which is probably the most complex set of rules Trello offers. But still, this is pretty easy to do. We pick Convert all the items in checklist dependents into linked cards. This time you won't get a dropdown, so make sure not to have any typos in there. If you enter the name of a non-existing list, it will fail to run and you will only get informed about it when opening the log view of that specific rule. I would love if that was more visible. Click on plus and the action gets added. Again, we click Save and open the system's card. Our card button can be found here. If we click it, The automation will run and we can see each of the list's items being converted as per our rule set. These checklist elements are now linked to our cards, while the cards themselves got a link to the system's card attached. Even later in our project, let's say we have successfully implemented all the elements in our checklist. Our board is probably rather cluttered at that point, and Trello has a habit of getting slower the more cards you have visible on your screen. Let's automate some cleanup. Create another card button. I call mine Cleanup. Its contents are simple. For each card linked from a coupled item in checklist dependencies, archive the card. That way the completed cards won't clutter your board anymore, but you can still access them through the link on the systems card. More on system cards in the previous tutorial, by the way. In case you want to automate the checking off of elements, create a new basic rule. When a card is moved into list done, find the first card linked in the attachments and check item trigger card link in checklist dependencies. Wait, is that a variable? Yes, it is. Trello offers quite a few, and I recommend giving their documentation a once-over in case you want to have more fun than I can cover in this tutorial. You'll find the link in the video's description. Variables are basically divided into two parts, the base version and a context edit version. So you can grab the name of a card by writing card name, but sometimes you need to be more specific and can add keywords in front, like new or trigger or found. In this example, trigger card link means it looks through the list of items in checklist dependencies and looks for the name of the corresponding card with the card link that triggered this automation. It needs a moment to warm up to how variables work, so I don't recommend diving straight into them when you first start out with automation, but at least now you know they're there. Next up, let's automate the writing of patch notes and work with those variables a bit more. Create a new basic rule. When a card is moved to list done by anyone, find a card titled Milestone asterisk in list milestones. Set the card's description to found card description, trigger card name, and link the cards together. So what's happening here? We have a list called milestones and a first card entry for milestone. The asterisk is a wildcard, so in case our milestone is in fact called milestone 2 or milestone April, it will still be found. Card description is the variable that will grab a card's description. By adding found in front, we get the card description of the card we told our rule to go and find. Behind the current description, we want to add another entry to it, the name of the card that triggered this automation in the first place. So let's create a milestone card and set up the core description for our patch notes. Now, drag a card into done and wait a second or two. It will get listed in the description and will get linked in the attachments. And to clean up the board once we posted about our progress, we can create a cleanup card button. Set due date now. Mark the due date as complete. And for each card linked in the attachments, archive the card. This will put a date on our card so we know when it got marked as complete, and archive all elements that got linked to that specific milestone. Man, I love automation. So, let's talk about some limits. On the free tier, you can do 250 workspace command runs per month. On the $5 standard tier, you get 1,000 runs, and on premium for $10, you get unlimited runs. But what's a command run? The number of times your automation can run in a given month is determined by the total count of command executed. Every click on a card or board button, triggering of a rule, or execution of a scheduled command is such a command run. Additionally, you get operations per month, which is something their own documentation regards with you don't really need to worry about it, and I agree. In a rule, you get triggers and a list of actions to run through. Each of these actions is considered one operation. I don't remember ever hitting that limit. You can find how high your usage is by going to Automation, Activity. Free tier is absolutely enough to get a good start with automations, and it's usually not the deciding factor in if I want to switch to standard or premium level subscriptions. For that, custom fields come into play. Custom fields are elements that show up on your cards, which you can, as the name implies, customize. They are part of the standard tier, and I remember using them heavily in my previous job, for example, to add time or monetary budgets to cards. If you need more info available on the front of a card, custom fields is what you're looking for, and they can be automated like any other thing inside Trello. But if you need fields but don't need to automate anything, for example like this custom dropdown I created when I realized my labels weren't enough anymore, welcome to Trello Power-Ups. Power-Ups are basically add-ons you can install into Trello. Some are provided by Trello itself, some are created by outsiders. Some are free, some cost money, and my major gripe with this system is that it's not instantly apparent which pricing model each power-up needs. You'll have to read through their descriptions, and sometimes you'll only realize once you've installed them that they want money. Which is alright, good work deserves money, but I'd like to know that before I get something. Anyway, look for a power-up called Amazing Fields. Most of its feature set is free, and thankfully the, in my opinion, most useful fields are included in this free tier. As an example, let's create a dropdown. Click on Add, Basic Fields, Dropdown. You can set entries and corresponding colors here. Whatever you do will be saved by default, so once you're done, just close the window and go back to your board. When you open a card now, you'll be presented with your newly created field to use however you like. It takes a moment to show up though. Which brings me back to automation. You can't automate these if you are a Trello free user. Once you are on the standard tier, you can automate Trello's default fields with the same automation workflow as before. On the note of power-ups, here are two more you might enjoy checking out. List limits gives you the option of limiting how many cards are in a list. Good to keep task creep at bay. GitHub gives more features for your GitHub project needs. I honestly don't yet know enough about GitHub to explain this, but maybe it offers just the features you are looking for. Are you using it? Leave your review in the comments, please. I would love to know more. I love automation and customizing my tools so they fit my workflows. Which are you going to implement? And if you have questions, feel free to ask here or over on my Discord server. Have a great week.